Matthew chapter 19, verse number 1. And we'll read a couple of verses here. It says there in Matthew 19, verse number 1, excuse me, and it came to pass that when Jesus had finished these sayings, he departed from Galilee and came into the coasts of Judea beyond Jordan. And great multitudes followed him, and he healed them there. And so just kind of, geographical setting, right? Where we're moving, where we're going. He departed from Galilee, came in the region of Judea, and if just so you know, Matthew, Mark, and Luke focus on Galilee and emphasize his presence in Jerusalem just before his crucifixion. Yet it would be a mistake to believe that this trip from Galilee to the region of Judea is unusual. He did often move from place to place, so don't think he was only invested in these outlying places. He did go into Jerusalem. He did go into Judea a number of times. Great multitudes followed him, and he healed them there, it says. Matthew points out that, so his readers understand his popularity, was everywhere. We only see a couple of places where Jesus was not able to, wrong word because he's God in heaven, but get a foothold, if you know what I mean. In his own place, right? What was that? Where's his place? Nazareth? No. Starts with a C. Capernaum. He had a hard time there, I believe, right? Where he had to say, hey, if they'd have done in Tyre and Sidon what I've done here, they'd have repented. If they'd have done that in Sodom and Gomorrah, they would have repented. So he was very popular everywhere, not just in Galilee. Wasn't just among the outlying places. And then as we get back into just kind of moving along here, verse 3, the Pharisees also came unto him and tempting him, and the Pharisees also came unto him, tempting him and saying unto him, is it lawful for a man to put away his wife? And here's for every cause. They're trying to get him in a bind, right? And the truth of the matter is, they had been in a pattern here of doing just about whatever they wanted to as long as they gave money to the church or to the synagogue, to the temple, that kind of thing, right? And so they kind of made caveats for everything as long as enough money was given here or there. Catholics do that. They're called indulgences. I believe the Council of Nicaea put those into place. Might have been one after that, but they have indulgences. Independent Baptists have that too. And as long as we give enough of our tithes and offerings, we'll go do whatever we want to outside of church. And so it's a human condition to excuse what we want. And they're trying to trip him up. Is it lawful for a man to put away his wife for every cause? Now, they had seen Jesus do a couple of things that they wouldn't call lawful, right? Because he, of course, is the lawgiver, and he knows what the crucifixion on the cross is going to cover, and that is the sins of all men. But they're testing him. It's constantly, and if you think your life is full of conflict, I think Jesus just says, welcome to the club. Remember, he said, in this life, there will be tribulations, there will be troubles. You're going to face persecutions, father against daughter, a mother, father. Yeah, that's no modern homes, father against mother. Father against son, daughters against mothers, all that kind of stuff. There's going to be trouble going on. And the Pharisees do not almost ever give him a breath when it comes to attacking him. I know many times I've made this statement, and I've heard others make this statement. Can't win for losing. Can't get ahead. One step forward, 2 steps back. It seems like I go from one battle to another battle to another battle, and that's all it is. Well, I hate to burst your bubble, because to these Texans it's not bust, it's burst. I hate to bust your bubble here. It's going to be one conflict from another to another to another. I don't mean to discourage you with that. I just mean to help you identify with Jesus with that. He just moves on. And you know what he doesn't do? Again, he doesn't say, one more time? Really? He says, now a couple of times he does say, I'm tired of y'all. But for the most part he says, another time. He doesn't do that. He goes in and makes it a teaching moment for anybody who will listen. Previously in Matthew, they questioned Jesus on His work in Galilee. Now He's in Judea, and they're questioning Him here. Their questions were never honest. They weren't ever straightforward. They always had a twist. They always had a caveat. They always had a gotcha. They were always trying to catch Him in the paradox. You know, what we call a catch-22, right? Where you can't win with any answer to this. And they tried to catch Him up in that. Divorce here was controversial in Jesus' day. In fact, it's honestly been controversial most of modern history, right? It's just more recently that it's become less controversial. It was centered around here. There were two mains of thought when it came to divorce, centered around its most famous proponents, the Rabbi Shammai, I don't know, and Rabbi Hillel, who was more lax. So Shammai was very strict, and Hillel was very lax. So you got to understand that they were listening to their rabbis, not to their Bibles. And they were letting their rabbis interpret. That's why Paul said that those at Berea were more noble than those at Thessalonica, because they went home and they checked their work. They looked at the Bible and said, is this what it says? Instead of looking to the teacher. The teacher is a great guide. The teacher is one who can help you to grab concepts when you're struggling or can lead you through a path of discipleship, but the teacher never usurps his teacher, which is God's Word. And so we must check it. And but anyway, marriage was a sacred thing. Here's what's interesting, and Paul turns this on his head at one point, but if a man was unmarried after the age of 20, except to concentrate on the study of the law, he would have been considered guilty of breaking God's command to be fruitful and multiply. So he would have been sinning, according to the rabbis, right? According to the extra things. Because God didn't give a Levitical command to be fruitful and multiply. He gave a natural command to be fruitful and multiply. You go out, you get married, you replenish the earth. I would say probably with a world of 7 billion people, we might be getting close to being okay with not having too many more. But I'm just kidding. It's a joke. Don't get mad. But the point here is wow. If you didn't get married by 20 as a man, you're in the doghouse with God. You are a sinner. Yeah. Not the same as those 20-year-olds for sure. And their 10-year-olds were more mature than our 40-year-olds probably. So, but anyway, so what a thing, right? That he would have had to go sacrifice. He would have had to pay offering fees. He would have had to do all kinds of things. And he'd be in sin perpetually until he found somebody to marry him. And guess what? Probably the older you were when you were married, the less eligible you were. Because you didn't, live to 100. Right? And so you're aging faster. They said that by not having children, they killed their own descendants and lessened the glory of God on this earth. What a harsh thing. So guilty of murder by proxy, I guess. Now, in theory, of course, they had a high ideal of marriage, but here's what was wrong. They had a low view of women. The Jews had a very low view of women. One commentator said a wife was bought, regarded as property, and used as a household drudge. That means servant, without the benefits of servitude, and dismissed at pleasure. You saw that? Wife for every cause. Dismisses a wife for every cause. So here's what it was. I'm going to marry you. You do my bidding. If I don't like you, get out. That was the view of the wife. Even amongst Jews, that was the view of the wife. Women were not regarded highly. Now, we know that is turned upside down. That wasn't original Jew thought anyway. We had, who was the one woman judge? Deborah, and other women in the Bible. Hannah. Huh? Yeah. Sarah is not a good example. No. Sarah was highly regarded, right? We have Deborah highly regarded. So this was something that had crept in to the Jewish culture that didn't belong there. This low view of women. Paul, Peter, put it all down. They said that's not how we view women. Very often Paul would reference women that had helped him well and needed to be well cared for at their next location. He was taught by Ananias and Sapphira. Did he teach them? I can't remember. But there was a lot of women in the New Testament that were regarded highly. So I want to put that down and help us understand that. Let me just say this: I probably won't make any friends or build bridges with this, but I'll tell you, we have a low view of women today. We do, not just in the heathen. We have a low view of women. Period. And even independent Baptists, not broad brush, but there's a lot of a low view of women even in independent Baptists. And the idea that you got to sit down, shut up, you have no input, you're not valuable unless you're doing something valuable. That's not what God put in place. In fact, and we're going to talk about marriage at some point, I'm sure, but in Ephesians it talks about we are talking about marriage in our Sunday school lessons for a while. Actually, when I get back for just probably a good few weeks, we'll be talking about marriage. But the Bible says in Ephesians chapter 5, submitting yourselves one to another, then it goes on to talk about marriage. And this idea that a married couple is an equal couple, all right? Not a sub-equal one to the other. And in fact, even in the Garden of Eden, it was that way. She wasn't his slave, she was his helpmeet. And that means a helpmeet for his needs, meaning she was equal to what he needed in her life, not below, not underneath him. And so, very important subjects. And we're going to be talking about divorce, never an easy subject to talk about. But here is another statement. Their low view of women meant that their high idea of marriage was constantly being compromised. They valued marriage, but constantly compromised its value by lowering the value of one of the parties in marriage, and by making it easy to get out of marriage and easy for one woman to be replaced with another. Under the thinking of Hillel, the liberal one, a man could divorce his wife if she spoiled dinner. Any young wives ever struggle with a meal? So, yeah, it happens. If she spun or went unbound with her hair, meaning if she plaited it or unplaited it the wrong way. Spoke to men in the streets. Like, hey, can I have that bread? I don't know. Did you just put the money out and grab the bread and quiet? Yes. What a low view. If she spoke disrespectfully to his parents. They're hard. That seems like a very high bar. But this was the bar. The nonsensicalest dumb things. Now, you say, I'm glad we don't do it that way. And you've acknowledged that even in independent Baptists, not all, but even in independent Baptists, we have a low view of women. For instance, if you don't have marital relations with your husband, he will step out on you. Is that a low view of women? It is. It's objectifying them and is relegating them to one position. In that instance, of course. There's other things that we relegate them lower in as well. But here's the thing. No, we don't outright say, I'm going to divorce them for, not washing the dishes right, putting one plate in this way and one plate in the dishwasher that way. I'm very particular about the way the dishwasher's loaded because I'm OCD. And, yeah. Yeah, I don't mind. Yeah, I don't mind because I don't load it much anymore. Shelby does a lot of that, but I don't mind as long as I don't have to go in there and move the fork into the fork section and move the large spoon in the large section and the small spoon in the small section. As long as I don't have to do that, I'm fine if I load it. But no, to this point, I wouldn't divorce my wife for talking to another man in the street. How many men do you think lose their temper for that? Well, we're not in high school anymore. But even amongst, how many I didn't like what they cooked for dinner, so I threw a fit. I didn't like the clothes they wore, so I got upset. Come on, we're talking about men here. It's okay. And but how many men do that? and treat their wives like dung, which is a Bible word. I found it right out of the top of my head. It came out. And so treat their wife like subclass humans. They don't divorce them, but they divorce their heart every time something doesn't go their way. What are they doing? They're having the same view that these men did. So we're not going to talk about divorce quite yet, but I do want to mention to you men, ladies, we got things I could say to y'all too, but we focus on the men because that's what the passage of Scripture is about, right? Is a man putting away his wife. Now there's two sides in Ephesians. We'll talk about it in Sunday school. You know what a man needs most from his wife? Reverence. The wife needs most from her husband? Love. Right? Do we have to earn that? To some degree, yeah. You can't reverence an idiot. But are there diminishing returns where the lack of reverence diminishes his own self-value because of the person that he married, that the human nature wants? And the same thing with the ladies, right? Does her value diminish as we don't love them the way God calls us to love them? Yes, we're not here for marriage, but it's always, here's my statement, death of 1,000 cuts in every relationship. And it runs both ways. And then we find ourselves, but this isn't here. This isn't like everybody was beating everybody up, knives were getting thrown across the living room, and the cops were being called every other day. And so in order to save her life, the woman leaves. This is not what this is, right? And we often like to split hairs and make excuses. That's not what this is. This is... That's what this is. This is... there's something else I want to say, and I think it's probably not wise to say, so I'll let it go. Brawling woman whose voice could be heard in the next house. That would be cause for divorce. Well, I mean, we do find that in Proverbs, better to be, destitute than in the house of a brawling woman, right? And so that's not cause for divorce, though. It's just saying you should pick wisely when you get married. Or get a man cave and live. Yeah, get a man cave and live out there. I don't know. Could divorce his wife if he found a woman he liked better. Oh, that happens today. This is a hard subject. We're going to cover it this week, and we're going to cover it probably next week, and maybe the next one, and then in Sunday school we're going to be covering it. It is not my choice. God has led us here, and so just keep that in mind. All right? But it's hard as a pastor because we live in a society where the divorce rate is it's huge. And the only reason it's not bigger is because the marriage rate is declined. Right? And so, you know what's interesting? It is rising a bit because the younger generations have seen for 2 or 3 generations the nonsense and they don't want it. And they want to marry somebody they love and they want to stick with that person. And so we might have another one of those generations that just sticks no matter what. Like, our grandparents did. And so I remember my granddad, my grandmother. Well, they stuck no matter what, and there was a lot of whats. And so, but anyway, it's crazy. And another person said, perhaps too they hoped that Jesus would say something that would entangle him in the Herod-Herodias thing. Because remember what happened to John the Baptist? So maybe they wanted to see Jesus, and it wasn't the Jews that did it, it was Herod that did it. Maybe they wanted to see some soldiers come and get him and put him in prison and take his head off. So here we go, maybe they were setting him up. You think people set folks up with questions? Yeah, you know what there's an M word for that. Manipulation, exactly. This statement, what were you going to say? No, that's a whole different thing. But yeah, that's a state hospital thing. Yeah, we're malingering in this marriage, Nikki. Hey, look, till death do us part. It's going to be me or you, lady. So anyway, manipulation. A lot of times somebody asks a question not looking for an answer, but looking to destroy. And that's a good quote. Now, it says there, and we talked about this, I don't want to trip myself up. I'm going to go slow on this subject. We're going to take our time, and I'm going to try really hard not to say anything unplanned, because that's when I get myself in trouble. And so here we go. It says here, for just any reason, right? What does that mean? Yeah. What was Moses' reason? What? Let's back up. What was God's reason? There isn't one. What was Moses' reason? Fornication, adultery. Yeah. And then what is their reason? Anything. So we see the pattern. Now, I understand that I tripped you up with that question. What is God's reason? What is Moses' reason? And you feel, and you might try to, split hairs with me a little bit, or take a little bit of, take exception to the fact that I said God's or Moses. But it says, and we'll get to it here, but it says that God gave Moses this because of the hardness of their heart. So God's original intent was different than God's what the caveat He gave Moses. Well, just like in the garden, just like like Saul becoming king instead of it being a theocracy. God gave them what they. You remember that sermon not long ago? He gave them what they wanted, and they just took it and ran. So original intent, two should become one. Nothing shall tear them apart. Moses' caveat given by God, so it's valid, and I accept it as valid, is the idea that fornication or adultery, and Jesus tightens that by the understanding that fornication of the heart is fornication of the body. And so there's a caveat there. Doesn't mean you must divorce for this reason. It means you are able to for this reason, right? So they said for just any reason. Those were the debates. Each school of thought was that the Mosaic Law gave permission for divorce, right? Deuteronomy 24:1. When a man takes a wife, let me turn over there. Let me turn over there. Deuteronomy 24:1. I always find myself trying to rush, and I need to keep that lesson in mind. We don't have to finish. It's fine. And then y'all razz me about 109 weeks in Matthew. So what do you want now? Deuteronomy 24:1. When a man had taken a wife and married her, and it come to pass that she find no favor in his eyes, because he have found some uncleanness in her, then let him write her a bill of divorcement and give it in her hand and send her out of the house. Well, there you go. If I find uncleanness in you, now what is uncleanness? Is that my determination, or is that God's determination? That is unclean. Is that my determination? Just put socks on, because I'm just kidding. Is that my determination or God's determination? That's God's determination. We're within the bounds of the law here. What is unclean according to God's determination in the Bible? And that's number one. But the question here, of course, is what is uncleanness? Well, the strict rabbi meant sexual immorality. Okay? That means you understand that if a Jewish person went into a marriage as not a virgin, they were unclean, and that was an annulled marriage when they found out on the wedding night. That's what this is talking about. It's not talking about that she didn't cut her toenails right, or she couldn't clean the house, or she, talked to somebody in the street and he determined it was flirting, or, whatever it happens to be. That is not what this is talking about. And the strict rabbi considered it that way. Any sort of indiscretion, right, that would be sexual. The school of Hillel, the loose one, said uncleanness means any... Okay, I'm missing here. Uncleanness is sexual immorality, that's it. That's what the strict one says. The loose one says any indiscretion, even a husband's breakfast messed up, is grounds for divorce. Uncleanness meant as the lamb for the sacrifice, if there was a spot, it was unclean and not valid for the sacrifice. Well, they just translated that into my wife has a spot, and so they're unclean, so I can just put a divorce in her hand. Just put that piece of paper right in her hand and kick her out of the house. That's what they interpret as. Now, You marry a man like that. As Brother Bishop used to say. As Brother Bishop used to say, if you marry a man like that. You know, if you marry a man like that, you might do something just to get out, right? And so, but anyway, Barclay, a commentator, says that the rabbis had many sayings about marriages, bad wife. Man with a bad wife would never face hell because he'd paid his punishment in this life. They said that a man who's ruled by his wife has a life that is not a life. A bad wife is like leprosy to her husband. And the only way to be cured is by divorce. They even said if a man had a bad wife, it's a religious duty to divorce her. Now we're taking the Scriptures and doing all kinds of gymnastics and hula hooping with it. And that's what the liberals do. That's what they've always done. I'm sorry, I would love to talk to you ladies on your foibles, but right now we're focused on a society back then and unfortunately in some places today that is the same way. That whatever, we take the law and we twist it to do whatever we want to give us whatever out we want. Now Jesus, first answer, right? Let's go. Verse number 4, the Bible says, and he answered and said to them, have you not read that he which made them at the beginning made them male and female? That's a good statement. And said, for this cause shall a man leave father and mother, another good statement, shall cleave to his wife. Because you know how many in-laws have broken up marriages? I don't know why I'm pointing these things at you. So, stop it. I just have this. I probably need to clear this table off so I'm not filling with stuff the whole sermon. But the more nervous I am about a subject, this is a hard subject, I'm just going to tell you because there are a lot of hard feelings about it. But you know how many in-laws destroy marriages? Both ways. Both ways. But specifically here, the husband's family could cause a lot of grief. You want to fight that one out right over here? But no, the point is that you leave father and mother, cleave to wife, and the twain shall be one flesh, he questions. Wherefore they are no more twain. So he's asking, how are you talking about divorce to something? It's like breaking a diamond in half, is what he's saying. Wherefore, what therefore God had joined together, let no man put asunder. Remember who's speaking. Is it man or God? It's God. Original intent of God. 2:1, never divorce. Caveat given by God to Moses because of the hardness of their heart, adultery, and then, of course, they took it and ran. They say unto him, why did Moses then command? Oh, they got him. Why did Moses then? Now, who are they talking about? Man. Even in the law, we have to consider why and who the law is given to. And he said, because Jesus said, remember, if you look upon a woman in your heart, it's adultery. So how far do we want to take this? Guys, how far do you want to take it? Because Jesus will take it right up to the cross. He'll take it right up to heaven, and we can talk to God in person and see what He wanted. And so He started with original intent, which is how we should always start, of course. And He saith to them, they didn't specify, did they? Why did Moses then command to give a writing endorsement and put her away? What did they do? It's another manipulation tactic. They didn't quite specify the real statement. Who did that first? Who did this exact thing first? Satan did in the garden. Remember how he talked to Eve and how he didn't put all the full truths in there, and he led her into a with leading questions, led her into sin. Instead of doing the same thing here. And he saith unto them, Moses, because of the hardness of your heart, suffered you to put away your wives. But from the beginning it was not so. I say unto you, whosoever shall put away his wife, except it be for fornication, and shall marry another, committeth adultery. And whoso marrieth her which is put away, doth also commit adultery. And his disciples say unto him, if the case of the man be so with his wife, it is not good to marry. I say to you single people, maybe. I'm just kidding. But it is entering into marriage, and we're over time, but we're going to come back to this when I get back, because enough time will have passed, and I need to spend a few minutes in those passages of Scripture. But I do want to say this, that to their point, marriage is important. It's a big deal. It's not something to run away to Las Vegas on a drunken whim, right? Drunk on love, drunk on wine, what's the difference? And it's not something to be entered into lightly. And too often today, we treat marriage as something we should do, right? Instead of considering it. I just think about our young people going to Bible college. And what do the women preach in Bible college over and over and over and over and over? Find a man, 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 find a man.
Are you saying
Vitamin M. That's what they call it in Bible college. It's secular too, because think about Shelby. She's 26. She's becoming an old maid. There are people outside of Christendom that are going, when are you going to get married? When are you going to have kids? Well, I got some people we can give to you. You know what? Dad doesn't want to go to prison. Keep him at home. Because you bring a knucklehead here and hurt my daughter? I don't know. Not really. Because you can't go to prison if there's no body. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Not really. But the point I'm trying, if there's enough compounding evidence, you don't have to have a body. So, but the point I'm trying to make here is this. It's a big deal. And if you remain unmarried to 40, 50, 60, and you marry old, who cares? Because it's a big deal. And you shouldn't enter in on a whim. Right? And it's just so important. And I don't think, you know what, after marriage, do we take it importantly? Do we fight through? I know we fight. I don't mean that. Do we fight through those hard times to keep moving forward? Why do people stay married 40, 50 years? Because they ain't got nowhere else to go. No. Cheaper to keep her. Yeah, I've heard that one. It's because they're willing to fight through. And I don't mean fisticuffs. I mean they're willing to go, is this marriage important or not? And they made the point. They just made it in the wrong way. And I'm not trying to... we live in 2020. I almost said 2016. Weird? Yeah, we live in 2026. And it is less likely for somebody to stay married than anything. It just really is. And we're touching on very hard things when I do this, because I might be touching on divorced people. I'm touching on those that have been on more than one marriage. We're touching on those who haven't been married and are afraid to get married because of the people who've gone before them and the people they've met in the interim. And it's just, I'm going to touch on hard things and I'm going to hurt people, not intentionally. But hear me when I say I'm just reading God's Word and I'm preaching what it says. And so if it is sensitive, go to God and say, God, this is sensitive. What do I do with this? How do I handle this? And there's always grace. Because where sin abounds, grace much more abounds. So if you've been divorced, I'm not here to condemn you. If you've been divorced and remarried, despite what that says, you can't go then get undivorced and then go back and just compound all the things. You're where you are. God gives grace. Move forward from where you are. Brother Coomer says this, and I'm glad he said it, because overall, we're going to have a real abbreviated prayer time tonight. But Brother Coomer said this, and it was eye-opening for Nikki and I, because we're used to the belittling, unintentionally, I think, of women in independent Baptist circles and the relegating of them to almost servitude in the man's life. Think how I want you to think, do what I want you to think, don't question, don't, all this stuff. It was so nice for him to say, look, I'm not for divorce, but God gave your head for more than a hat rack. And if you're being abused, then I'm not here to tell you to stay abused. And that's emotionally or physically. And so you got to understand that I'm going to say this because this is what I believe. And I know what God says, and I know what is ideal, and also He has grace for us. Don't be dumb and die because of this. There are many answers that we can implement. And if a person's adulterating, if a person's in adultery, here's the thing. Staying with them is not going to help. Okay, they got to get their head straight, and we often make excuses for them. And so there's so much that I can't cover it in one. We're going to cover things over the next few weeks. We're going to cover some ideal marriage things in Sunday school, and unfortunately we're going to cover this end of it when I get back, at least one Wednesday, maybe two. And so I didn't choose it. I often avoid things if I can because I'm a coward. But God puts into us this idea that we have to go through it. I've been enjoying it. I hope you have. I'm not trying to make excuses. I'm going to quit apologizing. But I'm going to tell you, it's going to be hard. Buckle in, buckle up. And just remember, if you have a problem with it, first go to God and say, Lord, am I interpreting this wrong? Am I hearing this wrong? Is hurt in my life causing me to respond to this wrong? Or am I right? And I need to go and figure some things out and say why I'm upset about this, right? And just move forward.